All right, Horizon Zero Dawn. Awesome game. Friggin' awesome game. I have a long list of notes to read through, and I'm just going to try to stick to that so we can not get super sidetracked and then see where that goes. I will be talking about the good things and the bad things. Overall, mostly good things. Very, very minor things that bugged me and stuff, but they were there, and I will talk about that. So let's get this started. First off, right away it felt more like Tomb Raider than Far Cry, which is a little strange. Unless you play both games, you might not understand the difference. And it's hard to explain because they're very similar. They're open world games. They're third person shooter action games. But Horizon Zero Dawn felt closer to Tomb Raider than it did to Far Cry to me in the way just it feels and everything. Most open world games distract me with side content. You know, when you go through an open world, there's a ton of stuff that you can go do. This game did not distract me with content. What it distracted me with was the beauty alone, the graphics, the different landscapes, just absolutely stunning and incredible to go through. And being different in the one way, the main difference than any of the other games really is just the sci-fi fantasy setting. So, you know, futuristic robots and amazing landscapes, just all kinds of stuff. And that's what actually sidetracked me. I couldn't wait to get to the next area in the game to see what else does this game have to show me. And it didn't stop. Everywhere I went was something new and beautiful, and it was just, that blew my mind. Like, I was always impressed everywhere I went. And there are some simpler looking areas than others. You know, there's these a whole ton of areas that are just like, whoa, breathtaking and wow. And then there's areas that are more normal, but they're still beautiful. You know, like I would call this gameplay that's playing right now, that's one of the more normal parts. It's still beautiful, but it's a little bit more normal-ish, you know, especially compared to some of the other scenes. The only thing I wrote, so with the beauty of the world, I would just keep wandering around and loot craftable materials that are scattered throughout the stuff, as well as, you know, fighting enemies and stuff. Sadly, there's no extra reward outside of enjoying the new beautiful landscapes for exploring. There's no actual reward to exploring. Exploration really doesn't really do anything for you. I would have loved to have seen some hidden optional dungeons or something like that. Something to make me even explore even further and make sure like every corner was explored. But everything is shown on the map. Any key places to go, it's all on the map. And if it's not on the map, it's basically not an area of interest, which is sad. Let's see. Oh yeah, rain and snow is always gray. This was upsetting for me, especially when dealing with photo mode, because and I love the weather effects, the dynamic weather, just absolutely amazing. I love that. It just felt alive. The world was always continuing to change and just be alive, and it felt alive and it was cool. But whenever it rained or it snowed, the entire world, everything, the scenery, everything would go grayish. And this is on the PS4, the regular PS4. I don't know. I'm imagining and I'm guessing that the PS4 Pro will probably have a little bit of difference there as far as the lighting effects and maybe the weather effects too. I don't know for sure, but I have seen some scenes, some screenshots that I have never ever seen throughout my playthrough with colors that I'm just like, where did they see those colors? And I know that I could, as far as I could tell in the screenshots that I've seen, it wasn't a filter mode. I've gone through the filter modes, and there was one scene in particular that I was just like, this guy had, like, it was the regular normal looking world and then a purple sky. I have never seen a purple sky throughout my playthrough. And one of the filters that can kind of blue tint the screenshot, blue tint the world, it makes everything blue. It doesn't just make the sky blue and then the bottom different. So it made me think that maybe the PS4 Pro has some different lighting effects as far as that's concerned. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing. I would love to play this on a PS4 Pro. Freaking hell. Anyway, so rain and snow, when it would come up, it would just make everything gray, like no matter what. So that I was just like, dang it, and that was disappointing to me. I was like, it's not ugly or anything. It's just there was no contrast. It was just like, if it's raining or snowing, it's just one color everywhere, basically. And that's a little exaggeration. It's not exactly like that, but that's what it was like. It would just gray the world down, which was strange. Noticeable and beautiful breezes. Oh my gosh, whenever there was like wind going, and it's not always, it's not constant, but when there was wind, the leaves everywhere, just so beautiful. And this is stuff that we see in other games. This isn't anything new, but it's always something I notice. You know, I love seeing the breeze in a game. It's just because I love the wind. I'm a huge fan of wind. I will go stand outside and, you know, big winds. I love the wind. These were just little notes I added. I played the game from the start without the compass on the screen. Currently, we're watching gameplay from a different YouTuber, and just some gameplay I wanted to find. Because anyways, I personally played without the HUD. The only time the HUD would come up is during certain things, like if I needed health or whatever. But I did not use the compass, and I thought that might have made some parts a little more difficult, as far as I didn't notice things on my compass pointing out to me, come here, whatever. It wasn't a big deal though, because I would just open my map up on the main map and mark where I was going. And the marker, whenever you mark something on the map, even without the HUD showing, your icon, your marker would show up for you. So I don't know, I just thought that would be something worth to note, and that's part of my exploring the world kind of stuff. I played without the compass. I played without the HUD. That was just a choice I went with. I like as very little HUD as possible, and this game had some really nice HUD options. Very cool stuff. There's dynamic versions of the HUD. There's all kinds of options for that, which is pretty cool. Alright, Horizon Zero Dawn doesn't offer anything new gameplay-wise outside of the futuristic coolness. There are a couple extra things that I did note. And while that is something that I did write down, the story is really good. The story is awesome, especially towards the end, but overall the main story is really good. There's some side stories that are really damn good. There was one side quest I did. It was a chain of side quests that by the time I finished it, it felt like I was like, they could have had this as a DLC, and I'm glad they didn't. I don't want to give them any ideas here, but that's how good the side quest was. Is it felt like it was a standalone like DLC side quest, because a lot of this game does have normal side quests, typical side quests that you would see in most games. But then there was this one specific side quest that kind of chained, like it started with the one quest and chained into more and more and more, and then it was just this big story that just opened up, and it wasn't huge or anything, but it was very noticeable as a side quest that this was a big deal. I was like, whoa. That was really cool. So after a while, I was playing the game for about 30 hours, and then by the time I beat it, I had 60 hours played on it. Around a little, actually, no, I think I'm closer to 70 hours now. But that was after I beat the game. I played some more and did some side stuff just for fun. But about 60 hours played when I beat it. But around the 30-hour mark, I started noticing that I was like, you know what? Gameplay-wise, there's nothing wrong with it. I love the gameplay. I have so much fun with the gameplay. I think it's great. But I was starting to notice, you know what, this really isn't anything that different outside of being sci-fi, fantasy, you know, really cool-ass stuff going on in the world and all that. But gameplay-wise, isn't too different than anything else. And that's to be expected. It was just weird because it just took me that long to really notice, like, you know what, it just kind of feels like the other games other than the setting. But that's enough for me. The setting was enough. But there are really cool gameplay things to get into. A couple small things I noticed. One was your sprint continues even after you loot. Not normal loot. Some loot you have to actually stop and lean down and pick up items from bodies or whatever. But if you're looting like herbs, flowers, normal little things, and you're sprinting towards that loot, and you're just spamming the loot button, you do not have to click sprint again. You will just keep sprinting. I thought that was a really nice touch. I love that. That was very noticeable. I was like, whoa. And then there's an auto climb. You auto once you start your climbing up like mountains or cliffs or whatever, you just hold the direction that you want to move towards, and then she'll move in it. You don't have to spam jump from ledge to ledge to ledge to ledge and just keep jumping the whole time. There are a couple parts where you have to jump when it's like a bigger gap, but mostly you would just hold the direction and you just guide her through it. And I thought that was really neat. That was also another just small touch. There are a lot of RPG elements that you might not notice right away. I didn't. It did to you. Later on I felt like I played this game wrong. I was like, man. There's lots of gear with different stats and resistances. Lots of weapons with options to upgrade with gem slots, gem-like mechanics as well, different stats purchased from merchants. I didn't play the game correctly for a long time, 30 to 4 hours, before I started to really customize my outfits and weapons with the proper gems. So if a weapon had, like if you buy a weapon and get a new weapon and it has like a fire stat, and the fire stat on that weapon is the highest stat it has, I would gem it with fire gems, more fire damage. Same thing with the armor pieces that you can get, the armor sets. If a specific armor had cold resist on it, I would gem it with cold resist. But it didn't. I didn't do that until like I was nearing the end of the game. You know, I started to really pay attention to that. So I probably could have done a lot better sooner if I was actually really getting into that. But I was treating the game as I played it like just an action game, a normal action game. But it does have a lot of RPG elements, which also made it very cool. Each weapon has its own specialties, and I started boosting them with specific modifications that fit the armor and weapons strong points. Yeah, okay. My bad. I should have just read that first. There are resist potions. As far you can craft resist potions. I never did this. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of extra things in the game that I never actually did. There's tons of weapons. There's a ridiculous amount of weapons. The different ammo types, very cool stuff. And I didn't even use half of them. You know, I picked what I liked and I went with it. And that's the thing. There's really a lot of options that you can go with, and it's a lot of fun. All kinds of different ammo, like shock ammo, shock damage, cold damage, fire damage, and then you have these weapons that can trap your enemies. And then if they're the flying ones, which were super annoying, but I just started to bow them down. I found out that if you shoot them with the correct arrow or whatever, it'll actually knock them out of the air, and then you can melee them. I prefer melee. I love melee. But there's a specific weapon that you can use that ties them down to the ground or whatever, which is pretty crazy. There's all kinds of like different ways to play, different guns to use, different styles to it. This is really neat. Traps. There are traps. Like I didn't even use the traps. Barely. I barely used traps. Like out of all the time I had played the game, for 60 hours, I've used traps for like maybe 10 minutes at that time. But the traps are very cool. It's not because they're bad. It's just because I'm an up close and personal gamer. I've meleeed almost every enemy I fought in the game unless I couldn't melee them. There's a few enemies you just cannot melee. But that's what I did. Interesting thing. Oh yeah, ammo is crafted only, does not drop from enemies. I thought that was very interesting. Enemies will not drop ammo for you. Pretty much, if you're out in the world and you're using your ammo, you can craft it. That said, you have an abundance of craftable stuff. Like you shouldn't. Well, I guess I shouldn't say you shouldn't run out of ammo. You can run out of ammo, but there's a lot of ways to get your ammo in, and it's really easy to boost up your ammo and craft it on the fly. You just open your weapon wheel, craft ammo, and you're good to go. It's all really smooth. But you can also purchase ammo from merchants. But it just doesn't drop from enemies. Like if you fight human enemies. The human enemies you don't fight as often as the robots, but I don't know. But they don't drop ammo for you. Sometimes they can drop a gun for you, like a special gun that Aloy doesn't get to normally use, like a heavy weapon, and those are pretty cool. Let me see. Oh, Cauldron Dungeons. Oh my gosh, Cauldron Dungeons. Cauldron Dungeons are like main story dungeons. These are special dungeons where you go in and you learn like just stuff. Like they're special friggin' dungeons, and every time I went into one, except for one, which was a side, really weird extra Cauldron Dungeon, it was inhabited, but most of the Cauldron Dungeons to me felt like I was entering the Matrix. It's like high technology, and the cool thing is while I was going through them, it was it's still inside of a mountain, so there would be parts where I'd be running through this super crazy like techie freaking background and craziness all over the walls and just awesomeness. And I don't even know how to describe it. It's just super cool sci-fi futuristic craziness. And then there'd be like these, like you go down a tunnel and then you're back into the mountain, and then you're just going because this cauldron is in the mountain. So there are a couple parts here and there maybe where there's a tunnel that you go through that it turns into the cavern of the mountain. You see the mountain sides and all that, and then you walk back into the Matrix world again, and it's freaking awesome. I loved it. I thought it was just super cool. I wish there was more. I wish there were more cauldrons in the game. I think there's only like 6 cauldrons in the game. And they're about maybe half an hour each as far as content-wise when you go do a cauldron. I didn't time them or anything. They could be anywhere from half an hour to an hour. I don't know. Time for me goes by super fast, so I could be wrong. But I would guess around half an hour each, maybe 40 minutes or so. But it's possible that one of them... I mean, some can take longer than others and all that. But I loved cauldrons, man. Super cool. And I did write a note. I forgot I should have had this up. Anyways, melee attacking is a little bit weird. It's a little strange. It's... There's no combo system. But it still felt smooth to me all the time. I had no problems with the melee combat. I actually loved it. I was just a tiniest bit disappointed that it wasn't like a combo melee system because of the fact that you have a heavy attack and a light attack. So I was expecting, when I first started doing melee, I was expecting to be able to, switch between them, just pop, 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 heavy attack, light attack, but it's not like that. Heavy attack is your strong attack, and light attack is your light attack. That's it. There's no real combos as far as when you're fighting enemies. And there's this talent where your heavy attack has a high chance of knocking down your enemy. This is to deal with robots. I don't think it works with humans. I forget. Humans are weird to fight. Fighting robots is easier than fighting humans when it comes to using melee. But anyway, so I would use the heavy attack to knock down a robot, and then when you knock them down, you get an extra critical strike that you can do on them. So that is something I wanted to know because I did think it was interesting that there's no real combo system, but it's still fun, and it still, to me, felt fluid. Once I understood the system, it's a little weird. I would have preferred to see a little bit more combo action, but I didn't miss it. I thought the system was fine as it was, and it worked great. And I think maybe a big reason that the melee is the way it is because they probably expect people to use ranged weapons. I mean, there's so many ranged weapons that you get in the game, and there's one melee. You start with your melee weapon, and that's it. You don't really do anything with your melee weapon other than get talents that can increase its damage and stuff. But I'm a melee person. I love melee, so I went at it. But as far as fighting the humans, the weird thing about the humans is when you fight a human, there's no stunning them. If a human is hitting you while you're hitting them, that's all. You don't interrupt their attack. That bugged me a lot. Like, I didn't care, but you get used to it and you can work around it. It's not a big deal, but that bugged me. I was like, what the heck, man? So there's no interrupting a human attack when you're fighting against humans. So I was like, damn it. All right, let's see. Optional background lore through open world town event conversations. Also talking to unmarked NPCs that were in a cinematic. Oh yeah, so the cool thing is, just like any open world game, well, a lot of them, not every one of them, but if you listen in on the NPCs, you can hear the story going on. This happens a lot, I guess, in Elder Scrolls games. You can hear a little bit of extra lore. And then the one thing that kind of surprised me a little bit was, and I liked it, was during some main stories of the cinematics, the main characters are the ones that are like discussing the main events and stuff, and then there'd be these side characters standing next to them, and they have like these little things that they add to the dialogue and all that. But then the next thing, after you're done with the cinematic and stuff, they'll still be talking about that actual story, and they won't just say the same thing over again. Well, they'll have their lines. They'll repeat the dialogue once they're done with the story. Like, if you sit there long enough, you can hear them repeat the same thing or whatever. But they're continuing it. Like, when you leave a cinematic, that story still continues, which is a little weird because you, like, for me, I wanted to listen in on it, but it was also something you don't need to listen in on. But was that the whole video? Holy crap! I'm gonna restart that. All right, well, this has gone on longer than I thought it would. My bad. Yeah, so it was just cool that whenever you stop like watching the cinematic-ish quest dialogue, they will still talk about that quest after you leave that, and you can stand there for a minute or two and listen to a little bit of extra lore behind that, which I liked. I thought that was pretty neat. There were some parts, not a whole lot of them, but there were parts in the cities where there would be these tribes singing really beautiful, harmonious, like, chants and songs and stuff. And I actually stopped to listen. I was like, wow. And that's some just random singing going on in the world. And I was so blown away. I was like, holy crap, that is beautiful. And I can only remember two specific spots. One was a chant, and then the other was a song. And there's some stories that you can come across. There's actually, I don't remember a whole lot of those, actually. I think there's like a few they give you at the very start of the game, and then later on I didn't really notice them as much. Maybe I just missed them, but I don't know. Not a big deal. I just thought it was really cool as extra little side things. And as far as the singing too, the soundtrack for the game is amazing. It's really beautiful stuff. All right, let's see. Day-night weather cycle changes how everything looks pretty drastically. Drastically. When it's day or night and the weather change, everything looks so different. I mean, I remember there was this one part I was at, this one scene where I was standing there, and I think I was talking because I was on the stream, and it went from like night to day or day to night or whatever. And I looked and I was like, wait, was I just here? I just couldn't remember if I fast traveled or something. And I was like, holy crap, this is the same scene at a different time of day. You know, it's pretty awesome. And which also reminds me, the photo mode actually has a option where you can change the time of day, which I thought was super cool. And the neat thing about that is it just changes the time of day as it would look in game. It doesn't change, like there's no special effects to it, which, you know, sometimes that can have an effect on the filter. But I just thought that was neat as well. When you go into photo mode, you can change the time of day. And there are some scenes that sucks because some scenes are blocked off from, like if you're inside of a city or a village or whatever, you can't move the camera with photo mode on. And there's a couple spots where you can't change the time of day, something like that. And those are rare. They don't happen very often, but when they do happen, it sucks. Let me see. I mean, and, oh yeah, I did note this. This was, yeah, you know, it seemed to me. I remember this. I wrote this. Enemies are way too easy early on, but near the end, even with max level, and I guess the later zones, because the world is pretty big. It's not enormous, but it's pretty big, and it feels bigger than it is because everywhere you go is something new to see. You know, it's really, oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's amazing how the design of this world is incredible. But yeah, so for a while early on in the game, that's how I felt. I felt like the enemies were way too easy. But I don't know. Maybe that was supposed to be normal. Maybe that was the way it was meant to be. Because like later on, like you know, after I was even max level, I was, you know, fighting some stuff that while I'm max level and I can fight it and I don't have a super hard time with it. Like it's not just a, you know, oh look, I just killed them with ease. You know, they just fell over. You know. So I don't know. The robot fights are amazing. There's regular ones, the little ones, and then there are the big ones. And every time I encountered a new big creature, it was like this epic battle that I had to learn. And while I say that, I don't mean it was like some super epic tactical thing that I had to learn, but I had to learn their new movements, you know, and it was just awesome. Every single time I came across a new big robot like enemy, it was a real battle. And then after that, they became more normal and stuff, and it just kept happening. Every time I came across a new one, I was like, whoa, it was just epic every time. Friggin' awesomeness, man. Let's see. I think I'm getting into the stuff that bothered me. Alright, so let's see. Had to micromanage inventory before I finally paid attention and took a real look through the huge amount of items that should be sold. You know, and this was a complaint I had. There was a point where I reached in the game where I stopped playing. Not only because of this, but because I had other games to play. I had got freaking Horizon Zero Dawn, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Nier Automata, like, within the same week, man. So I was switching it up and changing games, and after 40 hours of play, I finally had reached this point where my inventory was so full, because I used to just loot everything, because I thought I could. I was like, I need all this stuff for ammo, you know? I finally reached a point where I was getting really annoyed and bothered by having to micromanage my inventory. And so that made me stop playing. It just that ruins an experience for me. I really am not a fan of micromanagement anymore. I can't stand it. I'm just like, so finally, like a couple days ago, when I started getting near the end and stuff, I started taking a closer look, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just gonna go in here and I'm just gonna see what the hell all this crap is. And I finally have a much better idea of what kind of items I should have been selling this whole time and what kind of items I should have been keeping. It's just, the reason it was hard is because even the stuff that you don't use for ammo is stuff that you use to purchase new armor and new weapons. So there's so much stuff going on with the different kind of items you need to craft your ammo or to purchase new gear that it was just like, you know. But if I had paid more attention sooner, I would have had an easier time, and I probably would have beaten the game a lot sooner too. Like, instead of taking breaks here and there, because I'm like, I kept deleting, removing stuff from my inventory. So that bugged me. I was like, ugh. But I did figure it out, and now I'm just like, I wish I knew that sooner. You know, I wish I paid more attention. But I don't like having to do that, man. I'm just like, ugh. I just want to play this game. Let's see. Oh, here's another thing. It was a little, kind of bleh. Dialogues from side quests overlap with main quest triggered dialogue. So if you're going, like, for example, if I was walking through a cauldron and I came across a video, a recording thing, optional recording thing that I was listening to, or there was some kind of side chatter. Mostly, I think it would just be the dialogues, the recordings I'd be listening to, and if I moved while, and this happened everywhere, you just walking while listening, and then triggering the next story dialogue would overlap the audio log I was listening to. And this happened a lot, not all the time, but a lot, enough to be noticeable, enough for me to have written this down, be like, damn it, man. So instead of being able to walk and continue exploring while listening to that recording, I would have to stop and listen to it to make sure that I don't trigger the next thing and not be able to listen to both of them at the same time. You know, I did have subtitles on, which made it easier, but it was just, that was an annoyance, you know. Let me see. What else was there? Oh, yeah. Well, I guess this isn't a necessarily super bad thing. I was talking about this a little bit earlier with the photo mode. Rappelling is super cool. There's these parts where you rappel, where she just goes jumping off, throws up her grappling hook, and just goes down. It's freaking awesome. If you enter photo mode during that, you cannot move the camera during that. It's like a cinematic moment, so you don't get to control the camera there. I was just, I'm a huge photo mode person, man. I love that stuff. Let me see. Can't loot while mounted. That drove me crazy. Because, like, I think it would be much nicer if you could loot medicinal herbs while, especially medicinal herbs while you're mounted. But, so there'd be a lot of times where instead of riding mounted, I would just run because I needed to collect stuff. And I'm just like, I would like to move faster and, go somewhere on a mount. I have barely ever ridden a mount in this game because I always needed to loot something. Swimming sucks because it's slow. It never felt very fluid when I would jump into the water and start swimming, and then I would come out of the water. There's a little bit of awkwardness to it, a little bit of pauses, right? You jump into the water, pause, and then you could sprint in the water, make your swim faster and stuff. But it was just, there was always this pause in between landing in the water, sprinting, and then getting out of the water, like these little pauses. So that was, weird. Let's see. Some ammo requires in-game money currency in order to craft it. I thought that was pretty stupid. So on top of the crafting materials to craft your ammo, like if you're on the fly opening the weapon wheel, it takes not only materials but money as well. You have to use your currency. It's not called money, but you have to use your in-game currency to craft that ammo as well. This wasn't with all the ammo. Some ammo just required the materials. But then the other ammo requires money. I'm just like, what the heck? So that was all my notes. I do have like a little tiny extra thing, but the game, the minor problems I have at the end there, they're just super, super minor. They were noticeable. There's something I would fix, in the sequel or something, or just in any game in general. That just bothered me, no big deal. But it did bother me. So I was like, I'll talk about it. A really, really great game. Really great game. I thought the story was cool throughout, but the final few hours really picked up for me. Got to know more about what actually was happening, what happened with the world, what happened with everything. It all just came together. And, this stuff like this, these open world games, they're hard on me because I easily get sidetracked. And especially this, like I said, man, this game sidetracked me with the beauty of the world, not side quests. Just getting lost in the amazing universe that it is, So when that happens to me and I get sidetracked, I forget what happens throughout the story and stuff, So I thought, I especially thought it was cool that the final few hours just kind of rolled, it was just like, it was great. It was really well done. It was nice, pretty friggin' awesome. I loved it, man. So yeah, so great game, really cool game. I had a little bit of extra things to talk about, but it's kind of spoilerish with the story, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to end this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Whatever. Have a great day. Bye-bye.